everyone, James here from Barbechoo.com and welcome back to another cook on the channel, and today we are doing beef ribs. So it occurred to me that we haven't really done a lot of low and slow cooking on the channel, and beef ribs are one of my favourite things to make. Now, I've had some successes and failures with them in the past, so I've slowly got better over time. Most of the ones I've cooked before are the big sort of like dinosaur ribs, the big massive ones. But these are short ribs. So these are from the meat merchant in Moira. They're awesome quality beef ribs, and it's a 4 rib rack. You can split them up into 2s and do them individually, but it's nice to cook them all just in one big chunk. Today we're cooking these on the Weber Smoky Mountain, so I'm going to talk you through a little bit. This isn't much of a recipe, there's not a lot goes into it, it's mostly just time and smoke. So we're going to go through really how to set up the WSM. Again, I've been using the WSM for such a long time, I've sort of got it to the point now where I can set it and forget it. So there's not a lot of tweaking involved in it once you do get it set up. So to start off with, we're going to use the minion method. So that involves having unlit charcoal in the charcoal chamber, and then you add a little bit of lit charcoal on top of it, and that slowly burns its way out. I had some coals left in here from my last cook, so just left them in there and added some new ones on top. They won't all burn away, so you might as well fill it up, and whenever you've finished using it you can shut it all down. Those coals will stay in there and you can just add some new stuff the next time. There's no point in measuring out your unlit charcoal at this point. So fill that up and make a little well in the centre with no coals. Again, we're using the Weber briquettes for this, and you want to light some up. So I've used the little portable chimney starter, so there's maybe 15-20 briquettes in there at the most, but light those up and tip them into the centre. Next then you want to put the stack onto the Smoky Mountain, and then let's talk about the water bowl. So some people prefer to use the water bowl, some people don't and just use it dry. So it'll just act as a heat deflector if you have no water in it there. I do both, there's no right or wrong way about it. For this cook I went with the water bowl. Having a little bit of moisture in that chamber can help to regulate the temperature, and also it helps build up the bark on your ribs. So get the water in there while your fuel's coming up to temperature, and use boiling water. If you put cold water in there, all of that heat's going to be absorbed into the cold water, and it's going to take a long time for your smoker to come up to temperature. So while the Smoky Mountain's firing up, we actually leave all the vents open. So all 3 vents in the bottom are fully open and the top vent's fully open. That's just to allow our temperature to rise as quickly as possible. Now for this cook I was aiming for somewhere around 120 degrees C. Anywhere sort of 120 to 130 is fine for beef ribs. So let your temperature slowly come up. Those coals you've put in at the start probably won't be enough to get it up to temperature straight away, but they'll slowly light their way out into that unlit fuel. Whenever you approach your temperature then and you're a couple of degrees below it, then I shut down 2 of the bottom vents completely and leave 1 fully open. And then the top vent I will generally leave open unless I find the temperature's creeping a bit. I might shut it down slightly. But you're only really working off 1 vent at the bottom and your top vent mostly open. So preparing the beef ribs, there wasn't a huge fat cap on top of these, so I just left whatever fat was on there on them. Didn't have to trim them up at all. With pork ribs you remove the membrane from the bottom or from the back side of the bones. I don't tend to do that with beef ribs. The membrane stays on there, it holds it all together, and there's no meat on the bottom side of them anyway, so you're not going to end up actually eating it. So to help the rub stick, we've used a little bit of Frank's Red hot sauce as a binder. You can use oil if you don't want the hot sauce in there, but the hot sauce just gives that bark a nice little kick to it. The rub we're using today is the house rub from Keep Her Lit barbecue team over here in Northern Ireland. It's a brilliant all-round rub, and it went really well on these beef ribs. So give them a good liberal coating all over. Beef ribs are quite a chunky piece of meat, so they can take a lot of flavour. Then you want to let that sit and chill out for a little while just to let that rub set onto the surface. Then once your smoker's up to temperature, set the beef ribs on the top rack, and then you want to go in with a few chunks of wood. So I actually went with a blend of 2 of my favourite woods. There's a chunk of pecan and a chunk of silver birch. But whenever you put your ribs on, put the chunks in there straight away and they'll start to smoke instantly, and they should give you a good hour's worth of smoke, maybe a little bit longer. That's really all there is to it for now. Go away, get on with your day. Your barbecue should sit steady. If you start opening the lid or opening the door and firing up the coals, that's when you'll run into issues. So try your best to leave it alone. Check the temperature every now and again, but it shouldn't move if you have it set correctly. Now, a few hours into the cook, keep an eye on them and see if you think they're drying out. I didn't have any issues with these ones. They had that nice little bit of fat on top. We sort of basted them, but at no point during this did I think I needed to spritz them. If you do feel you need to spritz them, certainly go for it. You can use something like apple cider vinegar and just give them a quick spray. You can mix a little bit of hot sauce, garlic, whatever into that to make a mixture. But you're going to have to play it by ear. If you think they're a little bit dry on top, or they're starting to dry out, then you can give them a spritz just to keep the moisture in that surface. And then let's talk about wrapping. You can wrap, or you can do them completely without wrapping. To me, it all comes down to colour. If you think the bark's getting a little bit too crazy on them, you might not want them to get any darker, so that's whenever you'd wrap them up. But there's really no need to. I went this entire cook, and it was about 5.5 hours in total. We were pushing closer to 6. And I didn't wrap them at all. The colour was fine on it. They just had the right amount of smoke and the right amount of colour. So final thing to talk about is when are they ready. So I always test them with the thermopen for 2 reasons. One, to get a reading of the temperature just to see roughly where I'm at. So for tenderness you want them to be up in that sort of high 80s, close to around 90, and again this depends what you're going for too. Some people prefer the ribs to have a bit of bite to them, in which case you might not want to take them too far. If you want them fall off the bone and to really turn them into sort of pulled shredded beef, then you want to take them a little bit higher, sort of into that 92-93 degrees. So put it in there, have a reading, but what you really want to look for is feel. So when you're pushing the thermopen in there, there should be virtually no resistance. Again, that's how you tell the level of doneness. If it slides in there with no effort, then they're going to be really tender. If there's a little bit of resistance, then they should still have a little bit of bite to them. So that's how you judge then what you want. If you want a little bit of bite, then take them off that little bit earlier, and you still feel a little bit of resistance with the probe when it's going in. If you want them tender, fall off the bone, then it should just slide in and out. You shouldn't feel like it's going into anything. So as I said, after 5.5 hours, mine were done. I was really happy with the colour on them, and the last thing to do then is to rest them for a little while. So I took them off and wrapped them up in foil and just let them chill out on the chopping board for a little while. Probably around, I don't know, these ones had about 30 minutes and they seemed fine. You can go a little bit longer than that if you need to hold them for a while. If you're maybe doing it for a party and they're ready a little bit early, wrap them up in foil and a couple of tea towels and they should be fine for an hour, a couple of hours. But overall, I was super happy with how these turned out. The ribs were incredible. The flavour of the beef really came through, even with that hot sauce and rubbing the outside. The bark is probably the best bark I've ever had on beef ribs. That sort of nice crunchy texture to it. It wasn't too soft, so it was a nice mixture of crunchiness and then softness on the inside. Now, if you've never done beef ribs, I would highly recommend giving them a go. They're sort of, out of all the beef cooks, I think maybe a beef chuck's probably the easiest one to do, or the one that's going to go less wrong. Brisket is difficult and it takes a lot of time to get it right. Beef ribs are sort of in between, so if you're new to low and slow, pork shoulder still the first thing I would recommend giving a try, but beef ribs could be a good second cook to give you a little bit of a challenge, but you get massive results out of it. So as I said, not much of a recipe today, it's just hot sauce and a rub on ribs. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into how I set the WSM up, sort of process for doing beef ribs. As I said, the first time I did beef ribs was horrendous. I don't even know if I have photographic evidence of how bad they are. Second couple of times were really good, not perfect. Again, that whole thing of cooking them to temperature rather than feel came into play. So once they hit a temperature, I took them off, assumed they were ready, but they weren't probing ready. So having learnt those lessons, these turned out really well. And I'm quite happy with them, how the flavour was on them. Tenderness was perfect for me. If I wanted them a little bit more tender, I could have left them for a while longer and they would have been fall off the bone, but I like to feel like I'm eating something whenever I cook anything in the barbecue, so a little bit of bite's good with me. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and I will see you in the next video.